All right, it's time to talk with our featured guest, Dr. Ilona Casellini. Ilona, how's it going?
It's going great. Thank you so much for having me today.
No, thank you so much for being a part of the podcast. If you can, tell us a little bit about your past, your present. How did you get to where you are today?
Well, I guess I can start by saying I'm a fourth generation dental professional in my dad's side of the family. So you would have thought that I would have obviously become a dentist, but that
Mm.
isn't really how I started off. I wanted to be a veterinarian
Mm.
and I got my bachelor's in animal science at University of Vermont and was gung ho about becoming a vet and then graduated a semester early. And my parents said, well, you need to get a job. You can't just like hang out with your friends for a semester and have fun. You need to do something before
Mhm.
graduation. So while I was in Vermont, I had met through some family friends a prosthodontist who told me that if I wanted to come and be a dental assistant for a couple months, like he would be happy to have me. And he was actually instrumental in me becoming a dentist and was a fantastic mentor and kind of changed my view of becoming a dentist. Because
Mhm.
I think with both of my parents being dental techs, I had kind of seen the dental field from the laboratory perspective, and that wasn't something that I was very interested in at the time, or still am not very interested in doing any lab work. And so I was very like against becoming a dentist and doing anything with dentistry, but becoming a dental assistant really kind of made me see it from the dentist point of view. And then I actually became really excited about going to dental school and ended up applying to dental school and going to Penn and have now been a dentist for the past 14 years and love being a dentist and think that I chose wisely. So that's kind of how I got to where I am now.
Nice. Okay. And then now, do you currently own your own practice or?
I do. I actually went straight into private practice after I
Oh,
graduated from dental school. I started with a really small one operatory office that was actually right next to my parents' laboratory. And I did that for 4 years. And then I had an opportunity in the same building that I was in to buy a practice from a retiring dentist who actually happened to be on the same floor as me. So I didn't have to move very far.
mhm.
So I bought his practice and then I merged the two practices together and took over his space. Yeah, so I've actually been in private practice the entire time I've been a dentist and have had my own practice since then. So
Wow, interesting. And so, if you don't mind me asking, was that always the goal? Once you started becoming a dentist, was it, I want to be an associate and just do life, or I want to own my own business?
I think I always knew that I wanted to just have my own business, maybe because I'm an only child and I like don't like to share. I don't
Uh-huh.
know, those kind of things. But I just felt like my personality and having the support and structure from my parents, like having their laboratory, I felt really confident going into private practice straight out of school. Where I know a lot of people sometimes feel like they're not prepared to go off on their own or they feel like they need to do a residency. I just felt like I had such a great network that I felt confident going into private practice straight off the bat.
Gotcha. Okay, interesting. Now, if we rewind a little bit here, did you graduate? You were done with being a veterinarian, or?
No,
Oh, okay.
I got my bachelor's in animal science. So it was like pre-vet. And then I took the time off and was a dental assistant. So I never went to vet school.
Gotcha. Okay, okay. So you met a prosthodontist.
Yes.
What makes a fantastic mentor?
I think someone who really shows you like how you can be good at something and that they have a passion for it and they can relay that to you and really show you that like in that area you can have a good quality of life. So, he showed me you can have like a great family life, you can have a great job, you can have a great network, you can have a great office. So all those things together just really made me realize like, oh, dentistry isn't I think because I had seen it from the lab perspective, I just was never that excited about it, even though I have an uncle who's a dentist. I have another uncle who's a dental tech. I have grandparents that were dentists, grandparents that were, so I've been around it, but I think just having someone that was not a family member, maybe, who showed me that it could be something that I would enjoy, made me feel differently about it.
Yeah. And then that caused you to kind of, that's it. I'm going to go that way. Interesting.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, you went straight into practice ownership from graduation, right?
Yes.
So would you recommend it to other associates?
I guess I had a really weird kind of way I went into private practice because my dad was in the laboratory. It was like I had an in-house lab, basically. I also, at the time, I shared his front office staff. So I ended up like kind of just using his secretary as my front office person. So I didn't have to go out and find someone for the front. And she had been with my parents for so long. She knew me already before I even went to dental school. So it was a very different experience kind of going into private practice that way. Like it wasn't really the typical, like, oh, you buy a big office and you are here stuck with this big practice and you've never like worked a day in your life, right? As a dentist. So I guess like that, in that sense, it was a very different experience. And I only had one operatory. I did all my own hygiene. I did basically everything myself. I didn't have an assistant at the time. My dad actually would help and assist me on big cases. And so I guess in that sense, like it was a very different experience than what someone else would have if they went into private practice. And then after a couple of years, I felt that I was ready to take on something larger than what I had before.
Gotcha. So if you are hiring an associate and they just graduated, would you hire them or would you say, no, you should?
Yeah, I think I would. I mean, my dental assistant that I've had, she's been with me for 10 years. She was straight out of school when I hired her, and we've had the most amazing 10 years together and have a great rapport with each other. And so I think there's something to be said about, hiring someone and giving them a chance when they don't have a lot of experience, because you can really be a mentor to somebody, build something great together. So people don't have as many bad habits, maybe.
Yeah. Have you ever hire someone who doesn't have as much experience, specifically in the dental industry or in the dental space, and kind of like not regretted it, but said, okay, we're going to let you go?
I have. I think that my assistant's been my assistant the whole time. So I haven't had like any other assistant except during COVID. I had a temporary assistant, but I think maybe for the front office, I've had that experience where I tried to give someone a chance who had never worked in the medical field as a front office coordinator, and it didn't really work out because they didn't really understand the terminology. They didn't really understand what it's like to work in a medical office and how you interact with patients. It's very different than if you're working at a store or some non-medical office. So in that sense, I would say maybe, yes, I have had a bad experience, but as like dentists or assistants or hygienists, I would say I would be open to hiring people who don't have any experience.
Yeah. That's interesting because would you do that again, I guess, for front office? Because we hear a lot of the times where they say, like, hey, hire for personality, especially the front, right? You want a people person. And if you're eating at a restaurant and that waitress or waiter is like amazing, ask them. But now would you, or what do you think?
Still not jaded from the experience. And I think I would. I'm actually currently looking for a front office person. So that's a great question to ask me. So I think I would pick personality and work ethic over experience.
Okay. And specifically knowledge, like in the dental space, because you feel like that can be taught, right?
Absolutely. And, someone in the front office does not need to know everything. They just need to know the basics. And I think that can be easily taught with time.
Okay. Now, when you decided to merge, right, you decided to acquire the other practice and merge both together, what were some of the headaches you encountered?
So I think for me, the hardest thing was employee management. I think for me, the hardest thing was the dentist that I bought the practice from had practiced for, I think, like 45 years. And he had had a staff that had been with him for like between 20 and 30 years. And I don't think they really liked me or weren't very like open to me. And so they were very resistant. And I already kind of felt that coming on and had talked to the previous owner and was like, I just don't think that those people are going to be a good fit for me. And from like hiring dental consultants and talking to people, everyone's like, you need to retain the employees that were in the practice prior. Like it will help with patient retention and all that stuff. But I think really going with your like gut instinct and saying like, if you don't feel like you're meshing with those people and you don't think that they're going to be like a great team member, I think it's better to let them go than try to retain someone who doesn't want to be there.
Interesting. So then how can you tell like they didn't like you? What does resistance look like?
Well, I think me being a younger dentist and, I came in with a lot of like excitement about new ways of doing things and, new protocols. And they just really were not on board with a lot of those things and were not shy about being vocal about it. So it was very clear that they were not on board with those things. So I think that just going with what you like feel, if you don't feel it's right, it probably isn't right for you. So I think that that's like what I would take from that.
I think that's like a hard part, especially when you're acquiring a practice. You're trying to get them to like you, but at the same time, they might not say it, but they will think like, I know how to run this better than you, trust me. You know what I mean? Kind of thing. Like, you're going to run it to the ground and let me handle it. And you're like, this is mine. I bought it. What are you doing? So
exactly.
How many, I guess, when is it where it's like, hey, strike 3, you're out? Like how many options or strikes did you give them and things like that, opportunities?
I think, with each person, maybe the situation was a little different, but at some point you kind of realize that this person is not a great fit. They're not helping you grow your practice. They're not benefiting you in any way. They're not making you excited about coming to work. And, in a dental office, I have a small dental office. There's not that many of us. So if you're not really meshing well with someone, it doesn't feel right. And ultimately, you spend a lot of time at work and you want it to be somewhere where you enjoy coming, where the patients feel like the staff is getting along, everything is running smoothly. And people can feel that, even though you may not think so.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. Now, you said you have a smaller staff. You don't mind me asking, how many employees do you currently have?
Well, currently, I actually only have one.
Okay, interesting.
I have my assistant. Like I said, I'm currently looking for a front office coordinator. Prior to COVID, I actually fired both of my hygienists. So it actually worked out well during COVID. And then during COVID, my patients really loved that I was doing my own hygiene again and that I was spending a lot of quality time with my patients. And so I kind of changed the way I was practicing and I created kind of more of like a boutique one-on-one situation in my office where really I'm spending all my time with one patient. I do all their hygiene. So I really get to know my patients. I create like great bonds with my patients. It's a way for me to really get a better look into their dental hygiene and their overall like health. And patients really appreciate that time with me. And so it's worked for me. And, I'm not planning on changing it for right now because they like it. So
yeah, that's good. And so operatories, how many do you have?
I have 4.
4. Okay. So 4 operatories, 1 employee currently. You had 2 hygienists?
I had 2 hygienists and a front office coordinator.
Okay. And the front office left 2 or you let them go?
I let them go.
Okay. So you let 1 go and you fired 2.
Yes.
Now, if I can I ask, why did you fire them?
Chronically tardy.
Mm-hmm.
So every day was like a reason why she was late. Prior to her, I had someone for 7 years and I absolutely loved her. And she left for personal reasons. And I was so sad to see her go. And we're still very close. And so it's been really hard to replace her.
Yeah.
But yeah, tardiness for me is a no-go because I pride myself on being on time with my patients. So when a patient is standing at the door and the front office coordinator is not there to open the door and prepare for the day, that looks poorly on me and it just like doesn't work.
Yeah, that's interesting. So that's the front office. And then the
Yes.
hygienist, that was before COVID?
Yes.
Okay. And you just didn't need them anymore, or what was the situation there?
No, so I think they just were not on board with my protocols and on board with what I wanted to see happen. And so we parted ways.
Yeah, that's good though. That's interesting. Okay, so then you kind of shaved off the unnecessary, or not the unnecessary, but what didn't fit with your culture, your philosophy, and your practice. And so they're going to fit with someone else, right? Obviously. But now you're where you're at here. And you said you're able to spend much more time with your patients. How much time do you spend with one new patient?
With one new patient, it's about an hour and a half.
Okay.
So that includes most of the time doing some sort of prophy at their first visit if we plan on that. But, with the exam, x-rays, I spend a lot of time talking to them. It's about an hour and a half.
Break it down for me. In an hour and a half on a new patient consultation or new patient visit, how do you see the bond being created throughout this process in that hour?
We usually start off by doing a full set of x-rays. My assistant does that. And then I come in and we do a full oral exam, perio probing. And during that time, I spend a lot of time intermittently, talking to the patient, asking them about, where they're from, what they do, how they found us. So in that sense, I try to create a bond and some conversation. And then we talk about their dental goals, why they're here, what they're looking for. And so that kind of takes up most of the time. And then we do the cleaning. And during the cleaning, I can talk a lot.
Yeah, that's good. So then throughout this process, any specific questions that you ask that may even help with treatment acceptance?
Yeah, absolutely. I always ask them to tell me how they take care of their teeth at home because I think that is a huge opener to conversation because a lot of times patients tell me things and I'm like, oh, like you didn't know that you were supposed to brush your teeth twice a day for 2 minutes. You're only brushing once a day with a regular toothbrush. Like, let's talk about why it's important to brush twice a day for 2 minutes. Are you flossing? What kind of floss are you using? So all those questions kind of help me determine like, what is their oral health like? What are their habits like? So, those are the type of questions that I ask.
Okay, that's good. Do you see in the near or further down the line future expanding, like hiring a bigger team, doing more, maybe?
I think for now, like it's worked. And obviously my goal is to grow my practice. And at some point, maybe, I can only do so much. There's only one of me. And so you can only spread yourself so thin. So I definitely think that in the future, there's opportunity to grow the practice and maybe bring back a hygienist or hire an associate. So yeah, I mean, I'm open to those kind of things. I think, only time will tell what you're like, where the future takes you and how the practice grows. And you kind of go with the flow and see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay. Now, these next questions, we tend to sprinkle in a couple of questions so the audience can get to know you a little bit more. And the first scenario is time travel. So,
okay,
if you could go back in time and give your starting out self one piece of advice, but it can't be business related, what would it be?
Just to follow your intuition. I think that whether it's in your personal life or professional life, you know deep down inside if something doesn't feel right or something is good for you or not good for you. And to follow that, I think is so important. And I think ultimately will lead you to where you're meant to be or lead you to who you're supposed to be with or all those things. So I think just really following your intuition will bring you more happiness and peace because you're doing things that feel right to you. And even though you may not know at that moment why something feels right or something feels wrong, I think ultimately there's something inside of you in your soul or whatever that like knows what's best for you and knows where you're supposed to be and kind of is trying to guide you to that point. And so I think just following your intuition in life is a great way to go about your life and not always like question why you think things. Like sometimes it's just good to go with that feeling and follow through with it.
Interesting. Can you give me two examples of that, like one for the personal life and then one for the business or professional.
Okay. I mean, I think going back to what I had said about when I took over the practice and feeling like some of the employees were not on board and I didn't feel like it was right, but I was being told that I was supposed to do it a certain way. But deep down inside, like I knew that they were not a good fit. I think if I had followed my intuition and maybe not brought them on board, I would have had a different experience transitioning into my practice now. So I think that in my professional life, I think in my personal life, I've been a lot more like follow your gut and follow your intuition and, kind of going back to like me wanting to be a vet. And that was like my life goal. And I really wanted to do that. And I never thought that I wouldn't be a veterinarian. And then when I like decided to apply to dental school, it just felt right. And it felt like even though that isn't something that I had wanted to do my whole life, it was the right path. So just kind of giving into that and, going for it ended up being a good choice. So
awesome. Yeah. And I guess that's sometimes a little bit difficult because I feel like, for example, with your professional side, you said there was consultants telling you like, no, you got to make it work. You got to do this, right? And then now we see sometimes like if you ask a question in a Facebook group or Dental Town or anywhere, right?
Yes.
They're going to tell you like their opinions. And sometimes it might be like the majority says like, hey, you got to do it this way. So you're just starting to think we should do it that way. But what are your thoughts on that?
I actually think like going back to this, I mean, when I was like buying the practice, I mean, I guess there was Facebook and stuff, but I don't think I utilized those venues. And I think maybe having spoken to more people who had gone through that situation, not just like a consultant that you're paying or, the one person who had one certain experience, like I think those Facebook groups are fantastic because like now when I look at them, I mean, people are brutally honest on those things and they just like are like, this was my experience. Like, don't do this, do this. Like, this is a great opportunity. This is not. I think people are a lot more open about talking about their pitfalls or, and actually want to help others. I wish that I had maybe used those back then and not just been like, okay, well, I hired this consultant and this is what she says I need to do. And this is what the retiring dentist says I need to do. But like, there's so many other ways to do it. And if I had just maybe like asked some others, I would have gotten different answers.
Yeah, that's true. Especially if you're getting information from like, I would assume the retiring dentists, because they're like, they still want to kind of take care of their team, right?
Right.
So you're like,
when they want to make the sale, right? Like,
Yeah. So I would assume they're like, talking up their team and everything like that. But it's true. Like now you have more information. People like you, right? Who can kind of give us more and more about it.
I mean, I think that if someone asked me the same question, I would say like, if somebody doesn't feel right, they're not right. Like, it doesn't matter if they've been with the old practice for so long or even just like when you're interviewing someone, if something doesn't feel right, then it probably like isn't right. And there's someone else that's a better fit.
Interesting. Okay. So then currently right now, how many new patients are you getting monthly?
We're getting about like 10 to 12 new patients a month.
Okay, wonderful. And then what are you doing for marketing and advertising?
So I do have a PR firm that I use and then Google AdWords. And really, I focus on internal referral. I think that having our patients who know us the best refer their friends and family has really been the way that I've grown my practice.
Is there like a system you have built or is there something you specifically do or software that in order to get more internal referrals, or you just tell them like, hey, if you have...
I just think like treating your patients well, doing good work will ultimately lead patients to talk about you and tell their friends and family that they had a great experience at the dentist, because dentist doesn't always, it's not always the funnest place to be. So, just making it an enjoyable experience and a professional experience. And then they just do the work for you and talk about you and refer their friends and family. And we love that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And so the next scenario is the soundtrack of success. So what song best represents the journey of your business? And can you share a specific moment that this song would perfectly fit?
We're talking about a perfect moment. I guess currently for me, I would say it's the song Just the Two of Us by Bill Withers, because When we listen to like yacht rock at work and that song comes on all the time, and my assistant and I always laugh and say that currently that is our theme song right now because it's just the two of us and we're making it work. And so we like love when that song comes on because we're like, oh, that's our theme song.
Yeah, just the two of us. Interesting. It's gonna be different when it's three, but so then that means
Exactly.
like your assistant right now, I guess, is more than an assistant, right? Like
Yes.
she is the person at the end of the day. You're like, "Oh, how did we do? Or like, you know what I mean? Y'all confide in each other and everything like
Yes.
that. How does that
Yeah.
feel?
Great. I mean, she is not just, my assistant. Like, I consider her family. We've been through so much together. 10 years is a long time. I always tell her, like, I've been with you longer than I was married. So, that says something, right?
Yeah, that's wonderful. And then so she, how do you think she feels?
I think she feels fine. I think she's very happy. I mean, that's what she's told me. I don't know.
Hmm. Yeah, because I would assume, like, you know what I mean? She's been with you for a while now. And at the same time, in the interview process, when you're going to do interviews, do you also include her or no?
Yes, I do. In the beginning, I always do. I want her to meet them because ultimately we are still a small practice and we spend a lot of time together. And even if it's just 3 or 4 of us, it's still a small space, a small group. You want everyone to mesh well and get along. So, yes, it's very important to me that whoever I bring on, she is on board with that as well.
Nice. That's wonderful. And then throughout this time, what's been some of the best companies you've worked with? And then some of the companies that maybe didn't fit your brand or your philosophy or your business?
If I find something I like, I stick with them. So I've used like the same supplier for ever. I use the same, practice management software since I started. I mean, I don't really change a lot of things, only if
Mhm.
I like think that something is amazing or someone really sells me on something. So I guess that's a really hard question to answer.
No, it's good. So then, if you don't mind me asking, your software and your supplier, who are you currently using?
So I use Darby for our dental supply, and I use Dentrix as our practice management software, and Dexis for our X-ray software. And so those are great. And then for our like emails and texting and reminders, all those things, I use Sesame, which I really like, and they do a great job. Like they send out our like appointment reminders, they do all of our confirmations, all that. So I don't have to worry about that. And it's
Okay.
really user friendly.
That's nice. That's wonderful. And then, so what is a system in your practice that you feel is either unique, incredible, or you feel you guys got it pat down, locked? It could be a new patient walks in, or when you're front office to back off, or anything like that. Just a system that you feel that makes your practice a little bit unique.
I think what makes us unique is like we treat every patient like a VIP. So any patient that walks in the door, we know their name. I'm very good about remembering things about patients, like their personal lives and stuff. And I think just creating a relationship when they come into the office, you greet them, even new patients, like you already know their name, you address them by name when they come in, you've already kind of established a relationship with them prior over the phone. So I think just bringing that through the entire experience where they feel like they're in a safe place, that they're well taken care of, that they're appreciated, all those things like together kind of create a system where patients feel like, oh, this is where I want to be and this is where I want to stay and I want to refer my friends and family here.
Mhm. Nice. So it's the rapport building, right? That you're
Exactly.
doing. If you don't have a front desk, who's answering the phones?
Me or my assistant.
Okay, wonderful. And how do you think, or how do the new potential patients or the patients feel when they hear you?
Right? I mean, I don't think we've had an issue with that. I don't necessarily always say that it's me on the phone. Like if they don't ask who they're talking to, when well, most of our patients know that we don't have a front office, so they know it's either me or my assistant Cynthia, and they love like talking to us. So no one's really had an issue with it. And, a lot of our patients know that we don't have someone at the front. So texting and emailing has become like a big part of our practice. So it's just super easy for patients to text or email versus calling. And so we've made it work.
Yeah. No, actually, I've yet to hear anybody ever say, like, why is the doctor, you know what I mean? they more feel, especially when you do post-op checks and things like that, like they feel, oh my gosh, you're calling me. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Right. Instead of like, oh, we'll have my assistant do it kind of thing.
Yeah.
I would think it's a special thing in my mind.
Right?
Yeah. I would see it nice, but interesting. So then if we could think back from the moment you graduated till today, what's been some of your biggest pitfalls or struggles or fails?
Well, I think like we had discussed, like in the beginning, I think finding the right team, that was kind of the hardest thing that I went through. Finally finding like a good group that was there because they wanted to be there for my practice and help me build my practice. I wish that I had gone about it differently. And so that would be like the biggest pitfall, I would say. Overall, like I've had a great experience. I haven't had like a lot of issues. So I've been lucky in that sense. Yeah.
Okay, that's wonderful. So then mainly just finding the right team.
Yeah. Ultimately, I think that's the hardest thing for any business is getting the right people in the right positions and finding a group that works well together and can grow together. I think that's always like the hardest thing to do.
Yeah, definitely. And then for those who are yet to dive into practice ownership, but are curious about it, right? How has practice ownership affected your personal life?
I think that I've been really good about balancing like life-work balance. I think that, there are definitely times where you need to prioritize work and sometimes your personal life kind of suffers. But I think that just finding a great balance between everything, you need to make time for yourself. You need to do self-care or you're not going to succeed because you cannot be burnt out. You won't put out a good product. You won't be the best that you can be. And so I think doing that is just going to be best for everyone, for yourself, for your patients, for your staff.
What does burnt out look like to you?
I think burnt out to me looks like when you're kind of on this like hamster wheel of where you're just like going through the motions week by week and you like aren't getting where you want to be. And then you're feeling like unmotivated and then you're feeling stressed and then you don't sleep. And then, those kind of things. I think that that's kind of what burnt out to me feels like. And then you just have to take like a step back and reset and kind of, take a moment. And then I think that all kind of goes away and you can start fresh again. And so you just need to like take care of yourself.
And then I guess what does balance look like to you? Is that what it is? Like taking care of yourself or?
Yeah, I think, for me, like I love to travel. I think I grew up traveling a lot. And so I take a lot of time to go on vacations and take time away from the office because it helps me like just get recharged and have a different perspective on life sometimes when you go see other places and other cultures and gives you things to talk about and different perspectives. So that to me is how I really like recharge my batteries and get motivated to like go back to work and do it all over again.
Yeah. And I think we're like honestly wired to do that, right? Like find the thing that you need a break. Like that recharges you, re-energizes you. And yeah, traveling would be, that's an amazing thing. You know what I mean? To be delved into another world for a minute and then you come back and you're like, okay, now I can do this, right?
Exactly.
And you have new ideas too.
Exactly. And I think, you do need to find ways to de-stress that are not vacation. Like I've become obsessed with pickleball. Like that is like,
Yeah.
that's like a way I like
huge.
relieve stress and it's great. And it's good activity and helps like, recharge your batteries and clear your mind. So yeah, finding things like that.
Yeah. Wonderful. Awesome. So then you got the balance part down. And that's the thing I feel like, do you do this? Do you ever question growth where you're like, how some people are like, we're just going to try and grow and grow and grow as much as we can. But then you really realize like, I was happiest when I was just me and my assistant. And I wish we stayed that way. But why are we growing? Does that ever happen to you?
I think for me, like I want growth, but I'm also one that knows what my limitations are and what I want and what I don't want. And so I think that I have a clear vision of where other people, they're chasing something that maybe they don't, like you said, that they don't want. But I don't think that my personality would do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So you said you have a clear vision of what I guess growth would look like or the final stage. What does that look like?
One, getting a front office coordinator. That would be great because that would relieve a lot of my time to do other things to help me grow my practice. I think maybe at some point bringing on a hygienist so that I can devote more of my time to restorative work, because I do love, doing cosmetic dentistry and all of that. So just being able to do more of that but still keeping the same values that I have for my practice, where it's a very small practice. We treat our patients one-on-one, not looking to build a large practice with multiple associates and, multiple staff, because that's just not the vision I have for my practice.
You still want to be like really intimate, right? Like
Yes.
boutique with the patients.
Yes.
That's nice. And patients love that too,
Yeah.
They want to feel that. So that's wonderful. Last scenario is the philosophical investor. So if you could invest in one currency that's not monetary, such as kindness, innovation, integrity, which would you choose to enrich your business and why?
Gosh, I think I would say empathy. I think that having empathy for your patients, for any human or anything, any animal, the dental office is not always a person's favorite place to be. And knowing that people have fears, they have a lot of reservations about going to the dentist. Even if they're not fearful, they just don't like it. And so just having an understanding of how people think and feel and having compassion for that feeling is, I guess, what I would invest in then.
Empathy. So would you say that's something you're going to look into specifically, like with your front office, hygienists, all these people, like new hires, like, so then how would you tell? How can you test, like, you guys have empathy?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think just asking them about their family life, their personal life, those things, I think you can tell a lot about if someone has empathy. But I think, ultimately sometimes it's just being around someone for a while, you can get a feel for whether they have, empathy or not.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Wonderful. Dr. Casellini, thank you so much for being with us. It's been a pleasure. But before we say goodbye, can you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, absolutely. So we can be found online at SwissQualitySmile.com. We have an Instagram account, which is Swiss Quality Smile. We are located in Los Angeles in Westwood Village. And yes, that's where you can find us.
Awesome. So that's all going to be in the show notes below. Doctor, thank you so much for being with us. It's been a pleasure, and we'll hear from you soon.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great rest of the day.